None of this happened overnight. It only felt that way. I had had a big falling out with my family. I wanted to live on my own. It was a normal thing for a woman my age. Too bad my folks saw it as abandonment on my behalf. We didn't talk much anymore. By that time, I didn't have any close friends either. My best friends from college and my hometown moved on, made other priorities, and I guess I didn't fit into their picture anymore. I would occasionally message them, but it was like talking to complete strangers. Any attempt I made to meet them in person was greeted with silence. I gave up on all of them. There was no point in that since they'd already given up on me. It wasn't like I'd had a say in it. But I had my work. I was an assistant to the curator of the National History Museum, and it was what I'd always wanted. My heart wasn't full, though. Something was missing. I buried myself in work for a while. I met a guy at work with whom I'd go out with occasionally, and I went back to singing. I had been a vocalist in rock bands, but music had taken a back seat. Now I was discovering the scene of this city, but there wasn't a high demand for female singers. I auditioned for bands I met online anyway. The problems started during that first summer. I felt jumpy, nervous, anxious, irritable. There were problems at the museum, not coming from me, but they cost me my job. Several of us had to be let go. I wasn't ready to admit defeat and run home, so I applied for work wherever I could. I was rejected each time I applied. In my dreams at night, I was blind. There was only darkness. The darkness and the howling of dogs. The nightmare repeated each night. Sometimes I was even aware that I was dreaming and begged myself to wake up and stop the howling. I thought maybe I heard some stray dogs outside in my sleep. I reluctantly closed my window before going to bed one night, feeling the cool evening breeze on my face. I said goodbye to it and turned to the stuffy summer heat of my poorly aired bedroom. But the sounds would be muffled and I could get some rest. The nightmare came anyway. The ominous howling. Imagine my surprise when I opened my heavy eyes at dawn to the sight of my window open widely. That morning I bumped into one of my neighbors in the hallway. Old Mrs. Mills made a comment about my tired face. I replied by complaining about the dogs. My reply was met with wonder. Apparently, no one heard the beasts but me. No one. Things were looking up again when I met an adorable folk metal band on the internet. I came to their garage where they practiced and I sang the 4 songs we'd agreed upon. Afterwards, they took me to the nearby pub. I hadn't felt so alive in a long time. It was a feeling one has after a blind date with a person one might fall madly in love with. I was all smiles and jitters and hoped with all my heart to hear from them again. I was on my own. I had lost my job, my sort of boyfriend from work was MIA, but I had found a great band. My heart sank. I filled my small apartment with the sound of music, practiced every day. I got more and more into this folk metal genre. Weeks passed by with no word from the band. I presumed they still held auditions. I messaged them asking if they'd already chosen a singer. They had. My heart fluttered like a butterfly trying to escape my ribcage. The only reply I could come up with was a "congratulations" and a smiley face. Everything I saw those days looked unreal, colorless, lifeless, meaningless. I looked out into the world through a haze of numbness. I imagined that would be how depression must feel. Depression. The possibility scared me. If there was a brighter side to that time, it was the fact that the hounds got quiet. Several nights without them were bliss, but silence was broken by a new sound. The gentle crying of a violin somewhere nearby. From that moment on, I looked forward to the nighttime. The violinist started playing each night around 2:30, but I couldn't tell when he or she would stop. I'd always drift off into pleasant sleep mid-concert. There were no more nightmares, and the window remained open. This would have been a nearly satisfying end to this story if it hadn't taken a turn for worse once again. I sleepwalked. Those days, each night I fell asleep in my bed to wake up in the living room, in the kitchen area, outside in the hallway. That hadn't happened since my childhood. The strangest thoughts were gathering in my mind. I'd already imagined the dogs. Maybe the violin was only in my head as well. I needed another pair of ears. I messaged my best friend from home, inviting her to come over for dinner and wine. I made 2 attempts, but she was occupied both times. On a particularly hot August night, the violinist got exceptionally louder than usual. The melody was a lively gypsy tune. I dialed my friend's number. I needed her to hear that. She answered after it rang for a while. The only response I got was her anger for waking her up in the middle of the night. She wouldn't let me explain. Her work was overwhelming and stressful, and she needed her rest. I was furious. I threw my phone on the bed, threw a robe over my nightgown, and stormed out of the apartment. Whoever that nighttime violinist was, I was going to give him a piece of my mind. I followed the sound across the street into a poorly lit part of the closest park. Teenagers who usually gathered there played guitars, not violins. I was making my way through the trees when the music suddenly stopped. I stood rooted to the spot for what seemed like forever. My heart, that fluttering butterfly, threatened to break the ribcage. My eyes adjusted to the darkness. Something was moving out there among the trees. I blinked and stared harder, every nerve on edge. Was it the person with the violin? There by the row of cypress that marked the end to the park. Finally, she has decided to appear. A voice sounded behind me, loud and confident, nerve-shattering. I let out a yelp. You have nothing to fear. The voice belonged to a creature who stood behind me in a pool of golden light. I call him a creature because that was his true nature. He was tall and elegant. Blonde curls framed his white angelic face, but there was something in his eyes, something that gave him away. Not human, said a voice in my head. He smiled, looking away as if he'd heard my thoughts. Aren't you so clever? He mocked. Do I scare you? He asked after a pause. No, I lied. How about now? His face was suddenly only a few inches away from mine. I jumped backwards and fell to the ground. He stood over me. I didn't look up to meet his gaze. The creature started circling like a shark. "What's the matter?" "You beckoned, and I came for you." I looked up, the lack of understanding written on my face. "You were calling, and here I am. You were calling for death." "Yes, your work, family, so-called friends, the band, the boy who no longer answers your calls. I know all your pain." A sob was welling up in my chest. I sat there on the ground with my soul bare for the creature to see. "You could be so much more," he continued. He cocked his head to the side as if he was examining me. Then he extended his hand. Long white fingers gentlemanly awaiting my own hand. "They don't want you. There is nothing for you here. You don't have much of a choice. Neither did I. The night is awaiting, little one." "The night?" I asked. "Eternal night, my dear." I took